Hello there. Sunday, 31st of March at 15:49. The sun goes into the third line of gate 21. It's a third line day. The third line can be misunderstood. I know it's one of those gates, it's probably the gate really that has the most potential for being misinterpreted because of all those keynotes that go with it, with the trial and error and the bonds made and broken, and there can be a lot of assumptions around that kind of stuff, you know. And the third line here is called powerlessness. And this is a word that you might think, oh, well, that perfectly suits the third line. You know, they're constantly bumping into things, and they bump into things physically, intellectually, emotionally, and this is the mechanic of them. This is true, and it's all absolutely fine because it is what it is. But the name of this line, powerlessness, that kind of encourages a false assumption, actually, that this line is about being without power. And that's not what this line is about. This line is actually about the possibility of being powerless, which is a different thing altogether. So would you like to discover a little bit more about this third line day? Powerlessness. So the line says, where the just are condemned to a futile confrontation with superior forces. So third lines, they make and they break their bonds, and a third line who's trying to take control, you know, they can really come up against this side of their design. Ra tells us that the 21-3 tries to take control and then gets slapped down. Smashed is the word that Ra used, but you know, he could be a bit hyperbolic at times with its gate of shock. But then the third line will do it again because they're bumping into things again, and then they make the bonds, they break the bonds, they make them again. So they do the same thing over and over, but the same thing happens, they get slapped down again. The 21 is not designed really to have a boss. I mean, this is something that's quite important. So having superior forces, I know the confrontations there are going to be futile because it's not something that the third line is, or the 21 at all, is supposed to really be experiencing. So every layer of management, every layer of control that comes in is something that's going to drive them crazy. You know, the 21 does not want people looking over its shoulder and telling it what to do. It doesn't matter which line we're looking at, the same thing holds true here, you know. And they're not designed to win those fights. You know, they're futile confrontations. This is not a fight the third line is going to win. Ra says that the moment you give a 21-3 a boss, that is when they become powerless. And the secret, of course, has got to come back to that strategy and authority, that pesky thing that we have drummed into us again and again, because it's the only thing that looks after us and that takes care of our energy and that gets us into the right situations with the right people to experience the things we're supposed to experience. But he says, don't deal with superior forces, you know, let them be. And this is what the lifetime learning is here, because it takes a while. There has to be some bumping into these superior forces in order for that learning to actually sink in and take hold. So this is a tough line. And the third line often does have a tough time. They might very well be built for it, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. The exaltation says that defeat is a survivable humiliation, although it's often acceptable only through the abuse of drugs and alcohol. So that's quite a tough line to hear, but the good thing about it is that it's in Neptune, and that means that nobody is being born with this in their design sun or with it anywhere in their design personality sun, any of their suns, or anywhere else in their design, because Neptune is not around in this area of the wheel at the moment. I mean, Neptune is in gate 36 right now. So this is an overview for us. This is just information for us to sort of, you know, to put into the depth of our well and to just sort of sit with it, okay? But the detriment says total withdrawal. Okay, so these are people who do not ever want to work. They don't ever actually want to leave university, or they don't want to leave home. All of these things because they don't ever want to have somebody in a position of power over them, whether that is a teacher, a boss, a landlady, anybody really. And controlling them is just, no, thank you. So they reject the whole material plane. It's just an impossibility for them. It's so uncomfortable for them to have somebody telling them what to do. And yet sometimes Ra tells us that the ego needs to be broken. And in which other line is that going to happen, really, than the third line? If you're working with your experiment in human design, then you might find yourself in a position where you are an employee and you come into this knowledge and you suddenly find, oh God, okay, this is not maybe the best place that I ought to be. You use your strategy and authority to see if it's a place that you still need to be, or is this something you need to get out of? You know? But if you're using strategy and authority, as I've said before, as we know, you get the experience that is correct for you. You know? And the gate that's coming after 21 is the 51, so maybe you're going to be initiated into something that's going to shock you, that's going to then, break your ego, because that is exactly what needs to be happening. And it can be tempting to look at these lines and try to avoid them and think that if I follow strategy and authority, then I won't have to experience it, I'll be avoiding this line, but that's not really the point of it. The point is that we experience whatever we're brought to our attention to experience, whatever we're led to on our correct trajectory. And the beautiful thing about the transits really is they bring all of us who don't have these activations consistently the chance to experience them, the chance to have a little taste of them and see what they're like. So we have today the potential to tap into powerlessness, the potential of feeling into what it's like to have a boss. Because maybe actually in our design it's fine for us to have that. But today it might grate a little bit. And it's like, whoa, that's interesting. Why is that happening today? Ah, okay, I know why. It just gives you a little bit more information with which to meet your day and the experiences which you come up against, So there's a lot of potential tension in gate 21. It's on the gate of tension. And that also could be something that you're picking up on today. The 48-3 is called incommunicado. So this is a nice little genetic continuity because you've got powerlessness and incommunicado. You've got the withdrawal going into the 21-3 and incommunicado here in the 48-3. So a little bit of genetic continuity pulling through on this third line. This is fixed in the moon, this third line, and that tells us that there are cycles, because the moon, very quick in its cycles. All the planets, of course, do, but the moon cycles are really so obvious to us because of how fast it moves. And so we know that you might experience the energy of incommunicado, being incommunicado, but it's not going to last. This isn't something that, the moon moves very quickly through its cycles, so you'll sometimes be incommunicado and sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll be in with the collective, sometimes you won't. I mean, everything really is subject to these sorts of cycles. I've got hair all over my face this morning. I'm having a third line hair day. There's no lifetime learning in this particular line, but the exaltation tells us that what depth is rooted in repetition. Okay, and this is a logical gate, it's in collective circuitry, so we know that this is all about repeating things over and over again to gain mastery in them and to be deeply skilled in them as well. And this is what real depth is. It's a very long-term process, we don't master something overnight, generally not when it's in this logical process. It has to go through its repetition, its correction, more repetition. Gate 48, it's in a splenic center, not the splenic center, there's only one. And it's just an awareness center, and it's a very physical, primal awareness center that has certain anxieties associated with it. All the gates in the splenic center have a certain fear or anxiety, mostly fear. Anxiety we actually use as a term for the ajna center and the anxieties on the mental plane. So here it tends to be fear. And what it is around gate 48 is the fear that you will not be seen for the depth that you have, for the mastery that you have, for the hours and hours that you've put into repeating your process and getting it to that point where it's perfect. And for this to be ignored can be deeply frustrating. To the point, actually, Ra says that people who have this activation and are ignored for their mastery, it can be a psychic issue for them. They can be psychically damaged by that. So the 21-3 is being denied its ability to control by superior forces, and the 48-3 is having its depth ignored. So how are these descriptions, how are these qualities landing with you today? This might be a good one to check out retrospectively. It might be one of those things, at the end of the day, you look back while you're sitting with your mug of cocoa and a hot buttered crumpet and think over your day and look at where your desire to control has been thwarted, maybe, or where you haven't been recognized. Remember, the 48 is a projector gate. Maybe you haven't been recognized for all that effort that you put in, and so you draw back and become incommunicado. So what is the moon bringing to our focus today? Currently we're in gate 11 in the Ajna. This is the gate of ideas. So the moon transited into this gate at 1433. And please always remember to look at these gates in the context of your whole design. And you might see that this gives you a channel if you've got gate 56. So what does that channel bring to you? All of a sudden, if you don't have it usually, you might have Ajna and throat definition. So are you feeling that you want to share your stories, you want to express your stories or your wonderful ideas that have come through the collective to try and make sense of them for yourself or for other people? If you have the time and the space today, you could check in, see how that's feeling. Maybe you are in a cafe and you suddenly hear people talking about their ideas or their stories or their experiences, because it's all part of experiential circuitry. Because these can be the kinds of effects that we get when the transit is going through and we're bringing our awareness to it. The background sort of babble actually starts to have some kind of a theme running through it that we can pick up on. And you might start to tune into the moon if you're fairly new in your experiment and think, well, I'm not feeling anything. It doesn't do anything for me at all. And my advice on that would just be patient. Just be patient. It can take such a long time because we have so much conditioning that we're seeing the world through all the time, that many of these subtle nuances are lost. And the moon does move quickly, and so the nuances can be quite subtle. So sit with it, and maybe next time the gate is in the sun, no, the moon even, one of these planets is in gate 11, you can refer back. Oh, that's what I felt last time, and I'm feeling that again now. So maybe that is actually a correlation to the gate 11 energies. And you just build up a picture of yourself for yourself. What else have we got today? Oh yeah, another early morning gate. The moon transits into gate 10, and this happens actually at 5 to 1 tomorrow morning. Now I wanted to say the clocks change here this weekend, but I'm going to carry on doing all my timings in GMT. Okay. I have gate 32 in my design sun. This is the gate of continuity, so I'm going to keep going with GMT, and that's where we are with that, just in case you were wondering that there would be a time change. GMT down aboard. So yes, gate 10 at early doors tomorrow morning. This is the gate of the self, and this is a very important gate as far as global consciousness goes, because it's something that's in everybody's background frequency. It's something that's really driving the background frequency for us, something that I think almost certainly be doing a sort of a mini course on at some point, the global consciousness program, because it's so fascinating, and it's what is about to change in our world, in just 3 years time. So that's really worth having a little delve into and a play with. How the collective behaves, because this is a global consciousness gate, how the collective behaves can be determined by this gate. It's a huge conditioning gate for all of us, you know. On a personal level, you can ask yourself questions like, are you being true to yourself today? Are you actually expressing, is your behavior expressing the truth of who you are? Do you modify your behavior in order to fit in, or because somebody has told you to, or for whatever other reason? Interesting to contemplate. Because when we think about, are you expressing the truth of who you are, that also begs the question of, do you know who you are? And that can be another one to contemplate. So that's the weather for today. My hair is now itching my nose, tickling my nose. I shall go and do something sensible with it. And so that's it for today. So be kind to yourself. That's what I want to say, is be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself. And I'll see you on the next turn of the wheel as the sun takes us into the fourth line. Thank you for watching.